Couple of minutes past. I reckon now's a good enough time to start. I think I can see people joining, continuing to join, but I reckon we'll get going. Good morning to you all and welcome. It's particularly nice to see so many people joining. I was on the call this morning, and a good afternoon or evening to those of you joining us from Australia, New Zealand, and the States. It's good to have you, so welcome. Thank you all for joining for what promises to be an interesting and insightful session on legacy fundraising. I'm Ian. I'm partner and co-founder at Consider. For those of you who don't know Consider, we're a creative digital and strategy agency specializing in fundraising. We've been working with charities for about 20 years and have been in legacy fundraising for a good many of them, where we've developed a reputation for creating intelligent and successful work. From legacy propositions to on and offline supporter comms of all descriptions, from audience insight and strategy to nurture and pledger journeys and legacy TV. There's very little Consider hasn't done in legacies. In fact, Joe pointed out to me earlier this week that we developed legacy programs for 18 charities in the last 2 years alone. And of course, that experience provides us with a rather unique and broad view across legacy fundraising and a lot of expertise. Almost as much expertise as our panel, but more about them in a moment. Before we really get into things, a couple of the usual webinar housekeeping points. We are aiming to wrap up at midday to let you get on with your busy days. However, if we are in the middle of a really good chat and the conversation is flowing, our panel have very kindly, with no pressure from me whatsoever, agreed to stay on for a few minutes longer to ensure we can square away some of the questions. Speaking of which, please do use the Q&A function down there at the bottom of your screen to ask questions as we go. I can see there's a lot of experienced fundraisers here this morning, so we'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences to add to the discussion. If you'd like to ask your question anonymously, you can just click Anon in the Q&A function, and questions will be collated this morning by our marketing exec, Joe, who is here on the call somewhere. That's a different Joe to the Joe on the panel. There's a lot of Joes at Consider. And we'll answer as many questions as we can. Finally, you'll have noticed we're recording today's session. We'll send you all a link to the recording of the webinar when we're done. Right. So far, so good, I hope. I think maybe a little context around our session today. Legacies, they're clearly having a moment, and it's not hard to see why. With economic pressures that are all too apparent, wherever in the world you're sitting, we and our typical supporter bases have less money to spare. However, legacies are relatively resilient to today's economic pressures and provide vital income and stability for charities in these toughest of times. SME and Forward reported legacy income in England and Wales last year to be around 3.7 billion. That's a 13% increase on the previous year, and that's the largest they've seen. And an amazing quarter of wills now included gift to charity. These incredible figures are only set to increase, right? So with predictions of legacy income reaching 10 billion by 2050, largely thanks to intergenerational wealth transfer from baby boomers, this is an incredible opportunity for legacy fundraisers. It's our job to capitalize on the opportunities we have to inspire supporters about the incredible impact a gift in their will can have, which is why we're here today. As we edge closer to 2024, no doubt most of you here are planning, forecasting, or budgeting for next year's legacy activity and income. So we wanted to put on a session with our panel of experts around what's on their minds for next year. And so we split the questions for this session to three broad themes. Firstly, how to achieve board and leadership buy-in and unlock legacy investment. Secondly, where are our panel investing their legacy marketing budget in 2024 and why? And finally, we'll be discussing our panel's experience in creating effective legacy teams. Are there any internal cross-team partnerships that you should be leveraging, for example? No doubt that will keep us chatting for a little while. I'm going to do my best to make sure we cover all three areas, but I can tell you in the chats we had together building up to this morning, there was a lot to say. So I will do my best. Right, without further delay, let's do some introductions. As you've no doubt guessed, I'll be posing the questions and generally channeling my inner Paxman, that's minus the aggression, to keep things moving and on track. But right now, I'm very pleased to introduce our panel. A very, very big welcome to you all. It's lovely to see you again. Um, can I ask you all to quickly introduce yourselves? Emma, should we start with you?
Absolutely, yeah, happy to. So, hello everyone. My name is Emma Hazelwood, and I am currently the head of legacy development at the National Trust. I've been here for 6 years. And previous to that, I held a legacy role at the University of Birmingham, where I started my fundraising career.
Sinem, how about you next?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sinam. I'm the head of legacy engagement at Oxfam for the last year and a half. And previously, I've been also in the world of academics in a regular giving role. And way back into fundraising, my first fundraising job was in legacies. And I think that's where I caught the bug.
Excellent. Thank you. And Anish?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Anish. I am head of legacies at the British Red Cross, and I've been doing that for almost a year, coming up to a year in January 2024. And I've worked in legacies for about coming up to 8 years. I started as an intern at Cancer Research UK and have taken many different legacy roles on my journey to now be head at Red Cross.
And finally, Joe.
Hi everyone, thanks Ian. So I'm Joe. I'm Associate Creative Director at Consider. I've been here for coming up to 6 years, 6 years in January. And in that time, I think I've worked on more legacy campaigns than I can count. And that's everything from your kind of big TV and above the line broadcast campaigns through to stewardship and then even legacy admin, so the kind of full journey. And yeah, really, really pleased to be joining such a great panel today.
Thank you very much, Joe. And thank you all again for joining us this morning. I think I speak on behalf of everyone on the call to say we're grateful for you all, not just for giving your time, but sharing your views, not just on legacy giving, but also your experiences in your organisations as well. So thank you. Right, let's get stuck in. Let's start with talking about perhaps one of the biggest challenges for someone leading legacy fundraising at a charity, and that's securing organisational investment in legacies at senior level. If senior leadership doesn't see the value of investing in legacies now, you have a problem. And when the legacy sector is becoming more competitive every year, investing today becomes even more urgent. But when we're talking about an income stream that takes about 5 years minimum to convert into cash, how do we win over stakeholders who are already putting pressure on budgets? Well, luckily for us, our panelists have a range of experience here in persuading senior leadership of the value of legacy. So Emma, I'm coming straight to you with this first meaty question. You're welcome. In your time at the National Trust, you've done a huge amount to build the legacy programme. What barriers have you faced around senior leadership buy-in and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, no problem. And that's very kind. I think the work of growing our legacy program is very much a team effort. And actually, so at the National Trust, our executive board already had quite a good understanding and level of buy-in that legacies is a long-term game. And that was based on a history of conversations between my director of development, various directors of development over time, and heads of legacy administration, all giving that message during annual reporting and conversations. So when the time came to go to them and say, we need to grow this program because we were seeing a steep decrease in our market share, that groundwork had already been done. And actually, the challenge was more about showing that it was a good place to invest, rather than saying, we need to invest now, but you're not going to get the money for 10 years. They kind of had a good understanding of that. So our CFO is very astute, and we took our business case in a period of austerity. We took our business case in 2021, late 2021. So it was about giving a really firm assurance of the financial return that we would see by investing, because actually it was a really bad time for the organisation to be committing additional spend into anything that wasn't kind of running the organisation. So we got some external input from an outside agency. I'll call it outside Legacy Foresight. I think they are very much a market leader in that area. And so having an outside voice running the financial forecasting really gave weight to the surety of that. and I guess the thought that had gone into producing that forecast. And then secondly, it was about the robustness of the plan. So we'd spent 12 months consulting internally and developing a business case that when we went and asked for the money, it was there was a belief that the plan was feasible. And that parts of the organization that we needed to engage to do the work were ready to do that and had the capabilities and had the resource built in to actually deliver the plan if they gave us the money to do it. But I think lastly for me, while I was talking to the executive board about cash, I was talking to them about the need for prioritizing the work as well. So that kind of dual message of, yes, we need the cash to grow this program, but we can't just put cash against the problem. We need to have the prioritization of teams to actually deliver this work with the money that you're giving us.
Okay. And Anish, can I bring you in here? How have you approached getting legacy buy-in from senior leaders? Did you take it? Is there a similar priorities as to the ones that Emma was talking about?
Yeah, similar. I mean, I also, like Emma, I'm very lucky in stepping into a role where senior leadership have already bought into the importance of legacy. So that's really good. I think part of it is also maintaining a real clear view of what is going on in the market. So looking at your peers, because in fundraising as well, there is a bit of FOMO, fear of missing out. So if other charities are doing big legacy campaigns, it's not about going, oh, we need to copy that, but like, why are they doing that? Why are other charities investing in this area? It's a space that we should be playing in too, because we've got a right to talk about our charity and the longevity of what we're doing and how we will continue to need funds to do what we're doing in the future as well as now. So I think that's a really good hook in having those conversations about securing spend for us to use now to inspire the future legacies. I think it's also about the wider. So I know this chat's about senior leadership, but also I think it's about getting the whole department or directorate on board as well. Because if you can get the rest of your fundraising colleagues or marketing colleagues within an organization to understand that you need to market legacies now for the cash income to come in later as a very basic concept, and if you can get the organization to buy into it, then it's understood by everyone, and it becomes less of a struggle to get that investment from all levels, because we're all bought into the same products. So luckily here at the Red Cross, where we've coined the term destination project for legacies. Now, it doesn't mean that should be the last product that our customers get, but it means that it's one of the gold standard products that we have, and that will help us to have the biggest impact for our service users. So with that mindset that then trickles throughout the whole organization, it means it's easier for us to get that buy-in at all levels, and means that when we are trying to prioritize the work that we do, the whole organization understands why those decisions are being made. So whether it be from our creative team or whether it be to our digital fundraising team, for us to optimize a digital campaign quickly and change the narrative that we're sharing there. So I think that's been really important. And so if you already have a bought-in senior leadership, try and get the buy-in from the rest of the organization. It makes things so much easier. And then I guess just finally, and I'll talk a bit more about this a bit later, but owning the narrative of legacies, and part of that is you might just be responsible for the marketing function, but know what's going on in the income function as well for legacies. So I'm lucky enough to work across the whole of legacies, from marketing to stewardship and income. And I think it's really important that all of those elements speak together and have one narrative that we share with the organization, so that our marketeers can talk about probate delays and show that we as a department really know our stuff. So then when we are asking for income now, and we think it is best placed to be spent on legacies, we get taken seriously, because we know as a whole team what we're working in and what we're trying to achieve in the future.
Excellent. Thank you. Sunem, from your perspective, what's the situation like at Oxfam? How have you engaged internal stakeholders, whether that be whether that be senior or the wider fundraising and comms teams? How have you done it?
Indeed. I think I didn't have to do the hard bit of it because I came in once the legacy program had been revitalized. Because as some of you may be aware, Oxfam didn't have fundraising for a while, and it all came back in full force in 2020, 2021 when legacy program was built. I was not there yet. Well, I was not here yet. So I kind of missed out on an opportunity, but still fortunate enough to have a bit of a clean slate to kind of start building on. Uh, in terms of senior leadership, I think I was fortunate when I came in that they'd already made legacies a key part of the strategy moving forward. It still remains as we go into a period of new strategy, it still remains a key pillar. I think senior leadership is very aware, like Emma said, that it's a long game. It's not short wins, quick wins. And I think historically, if you don't know this, Google it. I had to. Richard Cousins. Oxfam has a Cousins legacy that's like almost mythical. So when I came in, I had no idea. So Legacy Foresight, like with their forecasting, always used to say we took the legacy out of our forecasting or out of historical data because that skews the results. And I was like, what is the Cousins legacy? And I think senior leadership were aware of that experience of 35 million odd pounds coming in as a legacy gift from one single pledger, the power of legacies to sustain or bring in sustainable unrestricted income for an organization. So they knew the long game. They knew the potential for legacies for the next 20 years. They had the experience of a huge legacy gift sustaining the organization. So I didn't really have to get senior leadership buy-in. They were already bought in. I think from my part, it was kind of getting not so much the buy-in, but more engagement from, as it happens, our division is called individual engagement, no pun intended, but the engagement from them to understand the power of legacies as well as senior leadership did. So again, it was just using the pipeline, the potential income that legacy gifts can bring, and using any internal engagement opportunity for the first year, especially as a new legacy team as well, because my team are fairly new in the roles that they are in. So I think the first Remember Charity Week we had as a team, we weren't even a full team. We used one of the SME and Ford stats, and I think it's probably changed over the last couple of years, but the average legacy gift for many charities being a 26,000 residuary gift, and Oxfam being double that amount for an average residuary gift. And we kind of did a little simple legacy maths, about what that would equate to in terms of regular giving. If you're looking at a regular giving income of £5 or £10, and that would mean somebody living up to 400 to 800 years old, giving monthly donations. So I think once we gave that stat, especially the direct fundraisers, telemarketers in the room that are so cash driven, you could see their eyes light up going, we need to tap into that. We need to be able to talk about legacies. Likewise, we kind of spoke to our major donor fundraisers to kind of get them interested in having those conversations without being scared to talk about death and legacies. Those used to be such big words in the world of legacy fundraising. And now I think we are probably breaking the stigma a little bit because there's so much buzz around legacies that it's become normalized. But yeah, I think there was still that fear of, how am I going to talk to people that are interested? I don't know anything about this, or I don't even know how to broach the subject. So it was winning them over with those stats, winning them over with the potential. And also, as Anish referred to, with Anish, maybe it's more of a linear destination journey. With us, our engagement model is more of an upwards Alps, we call it. And at the top of the Alps stand legacy supporters, because they've been through every single action you could potentially take as an Oxfam supporter to get to that level of love and loyalty for the brand that you are considering supporting with a gift in your will. And a flattery for us went a long way in engaging our individual engagement colleagues, because we kept on reminding them that we can't take any credit for somebody putting in a gift in their will. It's based on all the hard work that they have put in over decades and decades of engagement with these really long-term and really well-connected supporters, for them to make that final decision that I am going to support your work ongoing with a gift of my will long after I'm gone. So even that is sometimes good enough to get somebody interested to talk about legacies a little bit more. So those were some of the tactics that we used in getting our team members and our stakeholders engaged.
That's
I love
great.
that stat you mentioned, Cinnamon. I just was reminded of another statistic that came across again recently in terms of engaging your kind of individual giving colleagues. I think you're so right to make it about the value and the money, because that's what convinces those teams get more cash focused of the value. But it's I'm thinking of the Russell James research a few years ago that kind of suggested that if someone leaves a gift in their will, they'll be 70, their giving over their lifetime will be kind of 77% higher. So actually that being a legacy pledger, and there's a few reasons for that, like maybe you're more committed, or maybe there's a sense that you see your wealth differently, but the generosity goes up now as well. And I think that we shouldn't be afraid of that as legacy fundraisers, to kind of be open that it's not just the kind of, I mean, it is the pinnacle, the destination, the peak, but it means all the way up to that peak, you're going to be more generous too. And actually, our fundraising stream can have a big positive impact on everything else. So many reasons to love it.
Thank you, guys. That's great. I am going to take this opportune pause as the right moment to move us on to our discussion. And our next talking point is around legacy marketing next year, which I know we've all got a bit to say about. So let's start looking at the questions there. So you've got the buy-in, you've got the money, but where do you invest it? So perhaps you might be looking to follow the trends in legacy marketing, whether that's the increase in broadcast activity. Quick stat here, TV spend in legacies went up an unsurprising 22% this year compared with 2022. Or whether you're looking at the way that charities of all sizes are using digital as a way to engage or secure leads from new audiences. Or you might just be reviewing your charity's legacy marketing mix. Regardless, in a sector that's exploding with activity, I think it's easy to lose sight of what's perhaps most important. So where should you be prioritizing your spend in the year ahead? Joe, I'm actually going to come to you first. As you said, you've worked on a number of legacy campaigns and programs. So from an agency partner perspective, what do you think are the wisest things a legacy fundraiser can spend their budget on? What are you seeing?
Thanks, Ian. I think there's sort of two main areas for me. And like I said, we've worked on kind of 18 legacy programs in the last couple of years at Consider, and a real range of charities, kind of large and small. I think there is one area that comes up time and time again, and that is just making sure that the whole journey, the kind of basics of your legacy journey are in place. And I think that the point here is that the basics need to be there, that foundation, before you can do the big above the line campaigns, the big investment in, say, stewardship or kind of an events program. You need to make sure those basics there. And what do I mean by basics? I think thinking about that kind of timeline from awareness of exposure to legacies, the kind of initial marketing through to people inquiring, through to people pledging a gift, and actually leaving a gift as well. And that kind of thank you for families, friends, executors. That's all really important. And it's about, I guess, I think what's really important is standing back, taking that time to review that journey and seeing what the gaps are, and be surprised. Well, I think no one's probably shocked to hear that they come up quite a lot. So things like maybe your landing page form isn't optimized for inquiries, or your kind of online, your landing page isn't giving the content that your audience needs. Maybe it's things like not having a way for people to tell you they've pledged. So you're missing out on those leads coming in, which are really key, those pledger numbers. Maybe it's just kind of PPC, which isn't quite working. And that comes up a lot as well, where your charity is being outbidded by others in the space. So I think it's about making those basics brilliant. And once you've done that, you can then build the bigger campaigns. I think the kind of second piece for us is really just a real encouragement to invest in knowing your audience, know who your legacy fundraisers are. I think there's a bit of an assumption in the sector that anyone who leaves a gift in their will to charity is kind of broadly the same, if they're from a baby boomer generation or maybe the silent generation. We found time and time again that isn't the case, and I'm sure a lot of you on the call there kind of nothing wrong with that. Really recommend just investing in knowing who gives to you already, who leaves a gift already, and who your potential givers are. Just give you a couple of examples of some insights we pulled out. I'll talk about Oxfam if some of you are on the call, but one really interesting insight is that, a lot of people who give a gift to Oxfam have an education background. A lot of this kind of is skewing towards teachers. Why is that? Well, maybe, there's people who've worked overseas as a teacher. They've seen the kind of work that Oxfam does, or have that sympathy firsthand, that engagement as a kind of activist in their own right. Or maybe they've just done fundraising for Oxfam in schools, but there's a real higher skewing towards teachers in Oxfam's pledge base. So that sort of tells you something about the kind of stories you want to tell in your marketing and what's going to compel those people. Similarly with Bernardo's, there's a lot of educators there, also a lot of people who pledge because they've been part of the care system themselves. That tells you something really powerful for the marketing you're going to do. So I'll stop there, but investing in knowing your audience, I cannot encourage that enough.
Thanks, Joe. So look, speaking of Oxfam, Sinem, coming to you, two parts to this question, really. So, as you said, you've taken over Oxfam's legacy program relatively recently. In your time so far, what have your priorities been? And what do you think legacy fundraisers should put first in 2024?
Sure. It's interesting, Joe. Yeah, you were in a workshop with us not too long ago, looking at our pleasure personas a little bit more, and we actually had to kind of put ourselves in our pleasure shoes and act like, okay, if I was this person, what would my life be like? And then when we went to focus groups and talked to actual pledgers on our database, we were astounded by the fact that we got them down to a T in most of the cases, maybe bar a few variances here and there. And it's interesting that working for Oxfam, in a past life, I was a teacher for 7 years. So it's like full circle back to, dealing with supporters who had a teaching background as well, mostly. I think I was again lucky in taking the program on that we had some of the brilliant basics already established. It was more reviewing what was already in place and what was missing and kind of targeting the real wins or quick wins, really, in that kind of mix that we already had established. So we had a strategy in place working with you guys. We had some of the journeys in place, but I think due to various reasons internally, they had not really gone live and they needed to kind of be revitalized in a little bit. So once they were in place, the immediate quick win was UX. We have a great UX team. So working with them, we actually had somebody seconded to us for about 3 months to look at our journeys from the point of the first contact, that digital kind of into the website, to look at how we can improve and optimize the content for the best donor experience. That took us 3 to 6 months of work with the content, and some of the email journeys we'd already started running with you. Digital testing was really important to really understand and have a crack at what worked for us in a crowded market space as well. As you mentioned earlier, especially with the free wills, we all have to get on that bus, but we also want to stand out from the crowd. So looking at how we can really attract this right kind of supporters to Oxfam, those people with a passion for the global issues, those people from a background of potentially education. So how do we reach them beyond just giving them a free will, or what people constitute as a free will, which is essentially not free for the charity? And obviously getting stakeholder buy-in and starting an events program. Oxfam legacy program, before it was stopped, the events program was really successful. And from my previous experience of another international development charity, I knew that one of the biggest return on investment came from an events program, and we didn't have any. Also, so I'm not having a community engagement team in place, it kind of had to do two functions: work as a legacy engagement, legacy acquisition kind of event, but also engage with the community in different ways. So those were some of the things I've taken on to kind of for the quick wins while establishing the strategy to make the bigger things happen. That would be good to have. And within coming into the role, 3 months into it, I actually got senior leadership buy-in to go with a legacy TV campaign. So I'm glad to say that launched in October this year. And yeah, it was mainly consideration. We really wanted to put ourselves out there for the first time ever. It was Oxfam's first legacy DRTV ad, and first time ever Oxfam had been on TV in front of audiences with a fundraising ask. So that's why we had to make it a consideration rather than a direct response. And I think going forward, now that we've kind of looked at the brilliant basics, reviewed a good practice, and put some of those workshops in place to really understand. So we've now got our pledger personas. So we're looking at investing more in the stewardship journeys going forward to really understand what those people want, those pledgers want, and how best we can serve them in the best way possible. A lot more digital testing. I think we've got plans with Consider It as well, like with you guys, to work together in a more agile way of testing and learning with the new content that we have. Again, we saw the importance of user experience, I think, by just improving the storytelling funnel. And with sometimes with international development behemoths like Oxfam, it sounds so complicated. And people see the high street retail shops, they know Oxfam has existed for the last 80 years. But unlike some other charities where the cause, or some health charities where the cause is clearly obvious, they can't really pinpoint what it is that Oxfam does. So we wanted to improve the storytelling funnels to really take our supporters on a journey to really understand the impact of their giving when it's not as obvious as getting water or getting cancer care. So we are working on developing them developing them further, optimizing further where we can, building our stewardship journeys based on the insight that we have on our supporters. Looking into high value, because there's a high value supporters that haven't maybe given as much attention possibly in terms of marketing the right way, speaking to them right way, speaking to our high value teams as well, for them to provide them with the with the collateral that they need to have those conversations. And also, most importantly, now that we're in the face of our audience again, and we've seen early indications that consideration has considerably gone up, again, no pun intended, for a gift, and appetite has gone up for a gift and a will to Oxfam based on our campaign from October. Just building on that campaign, building below the line and doing a little bit more testing and learning in different areas with the TV ad that we've got as well. So I think I've covered it all. Sorry for nattering on and on, as I knew I would.
No, not at all, not at all. You've got a busy year next year. Emma, can I come to you and ask, like, where have you focused your investment at the National Trust?
Yeah, well, probably in the opposite place to Cinem. Even though we're a big national charity, there were quite a few brilliant basics that we didn't have for the legacy program. And I guess, it just made sense. We've got investment. There's no point in spending a lot of that money in front-facing marketing if we don't have the right proposition to hang that all on. Our proposition is well loved, but is quite old now. So that's one of the first tools that we've invested our budget in developing this year with you guys at Consider. And then also, if we're looking to acquire lots of new leads into the pipeline, we needed a supporter journey to continue that conversation with them through to pledge, which, believe it or not, we've never had in place at the National Trust. So again, we've been working with you guys at Consider on the strategy for that, and that's just a really exciting couple of really, like I say, basic things that lots of charities might have. Smaller charities might do it manually, but for us, it was the best place to start investing rather than kind of going after the big shiny DRTV campaign, which we are very much hoping will come in time. But yeah, it just goes back to everything Joe was saying earlier. I think that was really sage advice, and certainly the way that we've gone with our investment. I suppose thinking beyond marketing, we are a big national charity. We have regional spaces. And so the biggest amount of the overall investment that we asked for was actually in headcount to grow team members. We've had 7 recruited in so far to support the growth of regional programs, and that's it's simple things like running supporter events, which lots of other charities do, but also supporting our properties to promote legacies through internal engagement and training and resources. And that's mostly like hardly any budget actual spend goes into that, because a lot of it is adding a legacy message to stuff we're already doing. So adding it onto interpretation boards about projects, and those interpretation boards are going to go up anyway for our visitors, but it's about adding the where the funding has come from and that legacy acknowledgement there. And you know, if you've got retail outlets, I know Sinem, you've mentioned that before, anywhere where there's a physical space, I think that's a really good place to invest, and you can get some quick wins, especially in smaller charities where it might be a conversation with a colleague who sits at the desk next to you about adding some legacy messaging into something that they're doing.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. Thanks, Emma. Anish, I'll come to you if I may. You've been heading up legacies at the British Red Cross for about a year now. How have you built insight? For example, Emma mentioned supported journeys. How have you built insight into your legacy audiences at BRC, or indeed in your previous roles? But how should legacy fundraisers best do this, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're very lucky here at Red Cross that we do have a regional presence that is legacy focused. So we have community legacy managers who are across the country and have that direct contact with pledges and intenders and legacy potentials. So we get word of mouth feedback from them, and we ensure that we've got a really good feedback loop with our centralized marketing team as well. So, you know, communications that have gone well, events invitations, you know, that sort of stuff that has been really clear, we'll feed that back. And if there's something that's come through the door that didn't quite hit the mark or made our supporters feel a certain way, we'll also feed that back as well. So it all goes into our plans of how we can optimize communications going forward. At other charities that I've worked at, we did just have a centralized marketing function. So one thing that I did was to try and get a really good relationship with any other regional presence that we had at the charity. So at BHF, that was with our regional fundraisers, and with those that I've connected quite closely with, seeing if they had any pledges in their patch, and if they wanted to invite those pledges to come and have a chat with me and maybe walk through our website and give me their thoughts on that. Something really, really quite like church, easy to set up in a Skype meeting. But it also gives that individual the feeling like they're giving back to the charity that they love, and also their views are being taken on. So I think that's something that's quite tangible, even if you don't have a direct link to individuals. Of course, if you've got marketing spend, investing in some really good insight to give you something to work with, I think is really, really good. Also gives strategists like the team at Consider something to work from as well, and also to challenge as well, because it's not that the insight tells you what you should do, it gives you a nugget of inspiration for you to work from. So if you do have a bit of budget, finding the right insight on the audiences that you want to talk to and develop, I think is a really good way of going. And yeah, using all the different networks that you have within your organization to learn about the different audiences that we already talk to, and see if there's anything that can match up or anything that you can test as well. So recently our philanthropy team here have created this really great 2-pager document to send to some of their major donors to say what we've done this year. And what we're going to do is test that with some of our warm legacy supporters to see if that's the sort of information that they would like to receive at the end of year. We've actually not paid for it to be produced, but it's something that we can share. But the reason we got that is because we've built relationships with our philanthropy team, and they're willing to share with us, and vice versa as well. So there are some smaller things you can do in order to sort of build little tests or little moments of insight for your audience, which I think are also incredibly valuable.
Yeah, they're great. It really sounds like you're working on partnerships at BRC, and also insight and strategy seems to be a common theme between the three of your organisations. Sinem, not surprising to hear you talking about digital testing, but interesting, Emma, to hear you talking about asking for investment in headcount in teams. Yeah, that's we'll come on to that in a second. But thank you to all of you on the call. If you'd like to share where you're investing your legacy marketing budget next year, or if you want to ask perhaps Sinem, Emma, or Anish a bit more about what they've said, do pop it in the Q&A panel. We'd love to hear from you. We'll be going to the Q&A after our next point. This question does feel like a webinar in its own right, but I'm going to move us on to our final discussion point. Quick glance at the clock. And that's our panel's experience in building legacy teams. Your legacy team might be established, or you might be building the function from scratch. Either way, getting the best team together is a priority. But in my experience, every charity seems to do it differently, and it's likely you're coming up against the same sort of questions. And those are questions like, how should legacy admin and legacy marketing sit together? That's something Anish mentioned earlier on. How should you avoid siloing legacy fundraising away from the rest of individual giving? What role do colleagues outside of your direct reports play in legacy fundraising? Everybody has had something to say on that. And also the big one, in a sector-wide talent shortage, how do you make sure the essential roles are filled? Fair bit to discuss here. Anish, I wouldn't want you to have too much of a breather between this question and the last. So I'm going to come to you. You've been part of legacy teams in some of the UK's largest charities. You know how important it is to work through internal teams that aren't just your direct reports. Could you tell us a bit about how you've done it?
Yeah, so I think there's a real importance, like I said in the first question, about owning that narrative of what legacies are. And so part of that in what I've tried to do here, and also what I try to establish at BHF, is to bring those teams together. So those different specialisms within legacies together, to see themselves as one team, to recognize each other's specialisms and what they bring, and celebrate it as well together. And so that they can all talk on each other's behalf about the work that they're doing. So we have a really strong legacies team here at Red Cross. We all know what we do, and we can all advocate for each other in the work that we do. So that's really important. And then what that does, that strength of voice, that strength of experience and knowledge, then permeates to the rest of the charity. So then the rest of the organization and the other stakeholders that we need and we rely on to work with really do trust us and believe that we are the specialists in the areas that we do, but we work collaboratively with them as well. So those in the content team, we work with them. We know the audience, they know how to create materials. So like, let's work on it together, and also be open to be challenged. Because yes, we know our audiences, but audiences develop. So who are we trying to talk to, and what is the message we're putting across? Another team that we do a lot of work with is our digital fundraising team. So we've had to learn a lot about how to optimize and what to put in front of supporters to generate new leads and acquisition. But also we come with a wealth of knowledge of the sort of materials and journeys that those customers would expect to go on as well. So sharing between both teams, so we're upskilling both areas, I think is really important. And then that adds to that retention piece as well, and how we grow the sort of legacy workforce, as it were. If we collaborate with more and more people across different functions and teams in the organization, and everyone gets a slice of the legacy love, it means that when they do move to another charity, or a legacy position might comes up, they might feel confident because they've had a good experience of working with us to maybe go for a legacy specific role, especially when we're talking about how much income it brings and the impact it can have on service users. It makes people proud to want to work within legacies. And that can come from just having a really positive experience with your legacies team. And like Sinan was saying earlier, again, always talking about an actual legacy gift that comes to the organization as a team effort, because it's not just the legacy team, obviously, but you do need to be really clear about that. It's taken the whole organization working together to foster that support and that gift. And it's always good to acknowledge that and outwardly acknowledge that in as many spaces as you can.
That's great. I love the one team and celebrating the broader team and celebrating the wins. And if we do another legacy webinar, I'm going to take giving everyone a slice of legacy love as the title. Sinem, can I talk to you about volunteer and retail networks at Oxfam and how you've used them to promote legacies? What advice could you give to people on the call around this? Specifically volunteers, I guess.
Sure. It's interesting because I think about a year and a half ago when I started, there was actually no kind of exchange between knowledge or expertise exchange or collaboration between the two teams. I think there was not so much appetite. and maybe not so much knowledge of legacies from the volunteer side of it, volunteer engagement teams. When from our side, we really didn't have the capacity. We were still a team member short. When I think that slightly started changing around the beginning of the year, I'd say. We went in there with that collaborative spirit that Anish just talked about, and knowing that, well, we can benefit from your expertise, but you can also benefit from ours, and we can have a win-win situation. So I mentioned restarting our events program. We did 3 test events this year. In quite close proximity in terms of timings at the end of September, beginning of October, to coincide with Remember Charity Week, October Wills, so kind of to tap into that halo effect of the conversation around legacy gifts as well. And we targeted Oxford, Birmingham, and Bristol. Those areas are quite key for us in terms of where our supporters are, in terms of what we call engaged global citizens are, that are closest to Oxfam cause, but also in terms of our retail network as well. I mean, Oxford is a no-brainer, Oxfam, Oxford, but also Bristol is a key point for us as well. And that's why we also targeted some of the campaign activity around Bristol for our campaign. So working with our retail network, especially now that there was appetite and capacity on both sides to do that, we started engaging with retail colleagues on all the fronts that we could to get them to talk about the campaign. And I think I think Emma had mentioned this before about kind of bringing up the value that legacies bring. And one of the tips that a colleague of mine who now works at Oxfam International shared was, if you want to speak to retail networks, start with the shop managers and tell them about the value of legacy gifts and what they bring. Because as soon as they hear about how they can bring more value to the organization, they are there, they'll be bought in, you'll get their buy-in. And that's how we started. We kind of make strategic ins with some of the retail network colleagues, coupled with the fact that new strategy actually is towards empowering retail. I know sometimes, and I think we chatted about this briefly, Anish, in one of the prep meetings that we had, we expect so much of the retail colleagues and not really fully understanding how much they've already got on their plate to act as so many different things while managing a shop and managing volunteers. So it was all about also what they can bring in, what they contribute to, but how we can support them in that. And one of the key things was the events, how they can actually set up shop at our events to kind of have another income revenue, while also learning about legacies and learning about other areas that they don't often get to hear about, being at the forefront in the shops. Volunteers, likewise, we actually had a strategy, as well as speaking to the people that were shaping the strategy for volunteer engagement. We actually, with their, of course, permission, we went out to our volunteers with a handwritten note about the new campaign coming up to make it really personal. That was one of my team's idea, to go with that, because she kind of had that very personal touch from the charity that she came from, and it really worked, and we had really great feedback. And to give you an idea of how things have moved forward, last year we had some bookmark collateral, and it took us probably, I would say, 10 to 20 conversations to get just a test number of bookshops in 20 shops bookmarks. And it was generally, we see bookmarks as dust gatherers. But we've got so much other collateral that we need to worry about. And this time around, because we'd actually made the inways and we'd started making friends, bribery and flattery and corruption go a long way. So when we had these beautifully created, I wonder where these came from, bookmarks for our campaign, literally now we have shops that have used them in their decorations for 2nd and September, which is a big moment for retail network, and they often don't want it clouded by any other messaging. But we actually, when they were sharing shop windows, we saw these in there, like, legacies in there. And we've actually had shop managers saying, I didn't receive any of these bookmarks. Can you send some? Do we have any posters that we can use? And again, building on that, we've made use of other opportunities of supporting the campaign, the TV campaign in the Bristol area, with more bespoke tailored window displays to do with the theme of protest and the boomer generation. And again, now we've got a retail network and a volunteer saying, oh, how can we do the same thing in our shop and somewhere around the UK? So yeah, kind of that two-way conversation, realizing that we all have our own challenges in our work streams, kind of seeing how we can support each other, but also definitely showing the value of legacy gifts coming in. And with volunteers, I think it's a no-brainer. And I was a bit confused that we weren't making the most of that opportunity when I first started, because a part of the Oxfam's induction program to any new starter is volunteering at a shop for the day. And when I worked alongside some of the volunteers, they're actually very blasé talking about legacy giving. They're of that target audience for legacy fundraising. And they're often, well, from our experience at Oxfam, most of our pledges come from volunteering backgrounds. They volunteered and supported and campaigned for the last 20, 30, 40 years. So it's just a no-brainer that once you start speaking to them, there's going to be an appetite for them to kind of support your work. And we don't ask for much apart from come and be a legacy ambassador, be a champion in your community. And now that we've got the events rolling and we're taking it to different places around the country and getting on board and giving other teams a chance as well. Here's an opportunity. It's not just a legacy acquisition event, but it's an event where you can speak to the community and even maybe potentially recruit more volunteers for the shop. So making it a win-win has worked for us.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Emma, given that Gifts and Wills fundraising is so much stronger when legacy teams have support from the wider organisation, as we've heard a bit today, how should legacy fundraisers approach this? How can we build that support around the core team?
Yeah, I think we've built our team hugely into legacy development, but when we were building the business case, we were thinking about who are those teams that we're going to go and want to work with, and we built some actual headcount into those teams as well. So it means that the legacies are driven from within the legacy team. We hold the specialist knowledge, we hold the KPIs, but having resourced those areas, it eased the way, I suppose, to delivering the work. And I think that there were two things in our minds when we thought about, how do we make this an organizational program. Firstly, it was thinking about what is our strategy, what are the opportunities unique to the National Trust. For every charity it's going to look different, and so it might be different teams that you are wanting to work with, and looking and making sure we were engaging those teams through the development of the plan, so they knew the work was coming, and they had a chance to tell us what they saw the opportunities as being in their area, and they had a chance to tell us what resource they might need to deliver on those opportunities. And then so all of that together meant that when the big green button was pressed and we got the investment, the team were kind of ready to go and fly as soon as they were recruited. I think secondly, it's I guess so on a more retrospective approach. Now, once the team are in, they are on the ground and they are hearing what those opportunities are that maybe we didn't pick up during consultation. So they're also feeding back. It's important to have that consistent feedback loop between my team and their peers and me and their peers leaders, so that everyone's kind of aware of, there's an opportunity that's cropped up with a team over here. How do we sort of reprioritize or integrate to make that happen, because actually maybe it wasn't something that was picked up during the consultation.
Gotcha. Thank you all very much. I'm a little aware of the time, so looking at the time, I'd say we should probably move on to some of the questions we've been getting. Thank you to you, the panel, for answering our points so far. And thank you to everyone who's asked a question. We'll get through as many of these as we can. Joe and I have picked a couple to get us started. So let's start with, this is a good question. Probably one for all of you. Do you have examples of how you got wider team buy-in? It's easy to talk about integration, but with different team goals, I'm often met with, but it will take away from my task, my everyday task, I guess. How do you overcome that? Who wants to jump in on that one?
I can jump in. I think trying to make it a bit normal to share like success. So, if you've had a good Okay, an example is I went to a legacy event the other day, and some feedback was they really enjoyed the legacy event, and a couple have decided to start a regular gift with the Red Cross. So what I did is I made sure that the owners of the regular gift product at Red Cross knew that, and knew that it was part of our legacy event, which was the thing that inspired them to take that action. And just that little bit of like sharing of knowledge and, hey, look what we've done together, can really get that buy-in into how our teams and our products can support each other in each of our aims. So that's a really quick win.
Okay. So Emma, did you want to jump in on that question?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things have already been highlighted. I think the importance of thanking and recognition, and empowering people that they are the ones that are making it happen. The consulting, so it is about, this is collaboration, not delegation. You can't create, for me, you can't create a plan within the fundraising team and then say, right, go deliver it. You need to have consulted those people up front, and they feel like they've helped to shape that plan that they are then asked to deliver. Sinem, I don't know what else that you would add.
I think, yeah, it's we haven't found it a struggle as such to have those conversations, because we've had the buy-in, and that whole engagement model of realizing that as you go up through the pyramid of actions that you take, by nature, legacies is right up there, and that's where you're kind of trying to send people off to eventually. So kind of mainstreaming the legacy messaging. I think when I first went into fundraising 7-8 years ago, my first role was in legacies and key relationships, and it was a fight, a struggle to get any legacy mainstreaming messaging. I don't know if you share the experience, Anish, Emma, but now it's almost like other teams come to you to say, can we include any legacy messaging? We've come across this story. We'd really love to use it on our organic social media. So it's not so much of a fight when people realize that it's all collaborative work again, I think, as others mentioned.
Thanks, Sinem. Thanks all. Next question, moving us on speedily. Thank you to Emma for this question. We don't have anyone focusing on legacies yet. Would you recommend a legacy specialist joining a team, or do you think it would be better to use that money in other ways to promote legacies? Emma, I can see you've answered that in the panel. Do you want to expand on your answer a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I think,
Thank you.
and hi Emma, by the way. We know each other. Without a legacy specialist, I've said you can only get so far. I think what I mean by that is that there's some basic messaging that can absolutely be implemented by anyone who's good at community. Legacies is so like cross-disciplinary, by the way. So anyone that's good at comms, anyone that's good at relationship management can do legacies, but there will come a point in your engagement where you'll need to start adding more technical aspects to it, and have someone who really understands the motivations and the barriers, someone who really understands the audience needs, someone who understands the technical ins and outs of like the compliance of will writing, and what you should and shouldn't advise, for example. So I think, the awareness raising is much more easy to do than the sort of the actual engagement side, and seeing it through to kind of complex legacy inquiries.
Great, thanks, Emma. Anish, Sinem, did you have anything to add there?
I agree with Emma. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, and thanks, Emma, for answering that one, and Emma for the question. So another question. We've not discussed measurement, and so how important in terms of internal buy-in is clarity of measurement and KPI? So naturally, I think this taps into all of the questions that we've asked. KPIs affect buy-in, senior buy-in. You'll need to evidence somehow. Naturally, we'll need efficacy of marketing campaigns and ROI. Who wants to come in first on this one around clarity of measurement and KPIs?
I'd love to. So I think this is where we risk getting ourselves a bit stuck, especially when asking for investment. So you've got to give the clarity on what are your in-year KPIs to track success. And we were very clear through our process that that our delivery, the success of our delivery, is not based at all on the income that comes out at the end. Like, that's the goal, is to get the income out at the end, but actually our success is measured on the number of people that we are engaging, and that is our one big main KPI, is how many people are engaged with legacies. So for the business case, we set this is how many people we think we need to get into our pipeline of supporters to secure the income out at the other end. And then our annual KPIs are built off that. The other big thing that I'm a big advocate for is inquirers versus intenders versus pledgers. And there can be a belief that one pledger in equals one legacy out. And we all know that that's not the case. So it's about communicating that, the average attrition is 50% between pledger and legator. But your inquirers have, I think the sector average is like 8% of your inquirers will leave a legacy. So there are all these variables. And what we've done is we don't split out our targets for this many inquirers, this many intenders, this many pledges, but we have a certain tolerance level that we don't want less than X% of our in-year engagements to be pledges. So we've got that kind of target that we're aiming to maintain quality.
Great, thank you, Emma. Anish, Sinem, did you want to come in on KPIs, campaign measurement?
Yeah, I think it's really important. It's a really good question, and yeah, I'm glad someone brought up KPIs because it is important. Luckily, what we do here at Red Cross is we have KPIs across our whole directorate, and so when we're talking about them and being challenged about them each month, I'm in a room with leaders and heads from different other functions within fundraising as well, so that we're all hearing the same story each month. So if it is like, why are our notifications down, I can talk about the backlog at the probate registry, and then throughout the year people have been gaining an understanding of the metrics and how legacies work in that sort of space as well. And when we talk about measurement, say from a marketing point of view, if we talk about will pack downloads, it's about constantly bringing those data points to the floor in a wider conversation, so that other people within the organization become comfortable with them, and also comfortable to challenge as well, so they can pick out, so why has that gone down, or why is that not doing so well? And then the importance, I was talking about the team understanding the bigger picture, is that anyone within legacies can sort of like advocate for why things are happening or not. So there's a base level, and that's where you get the sort of respect of your understanding of your area of work, but also be open to challenge and not be where the specialists just leave us to it. Actually, no, challenge is good. We need to learn from each other as well. So having some clear KPIs, which we can talk about very often, and that can be challenged backwards and we can have a conversation about, is really, really important. So yeah, great question.
Just wanted to come in on that, Anish, and say that absolutely agree. And from an agency perspective, obviously, KPIs is something we need to be measured on, and there's a kind of direct investment in an agency that you want to see the KPI against. But I think really share that kind of bigger picture viewpoint. I think it's suggesting that you can't get too granular on the, okay, well, this digital marketing campaign on Meta has got to yield a certain number of pledges. That's just not going to happen. That's not how people leave gifts in their wills. That's not how that's not how that behavior works. So I think it's about advocating for kind of realism around the bigger picture of kind of these individual campaigns are not necessarily going to yield, well, they're definitely not going to yield a notification that year, and probably not huge amounts of pledges, but the bigger picture of marketing does. So I think, yeah, that kind of, I think, as you said, Emma, not being too tied to specific numbers of intenders, say, that's kind of almost letting the data point lead the strategy. The picture's bigger than that. So really wanted to second that from our agency perspective.
Thanks, Joe. I'm going to move us on to another question. There's some good ones coming here, and I love ones that start being provocative, like this one does. This is great. If the legacy market is going to grow, then could the internal argument be that there isn't a need for more legacy spend / resource? Income will increase anyway, although market share will go down.
I think that's where long-term forecasting comes in, like legacy foresight and the job that they do. For example, Oxfam would be the prime case. If the legacy market is growing anyway, why invest? Like, it's just going to keep ticking. But the fact that there's a lag of 5 to 7 years, and if you have not invested, your share, it's not so much the market growing, but how your share compares to the market, which has been the case for Oxfam to actually build a business case for support into legacies or investment into legacies. Because in as much as, yes, our income on the surface seems to be growing because that's the nature, but our market share has not grown because legacies hasn't had any investment or love. So it's now to turn the tide. If this is the golden decade or 2 decades of legacies, the time to invest is now, was probably 5 years ago. But kind of having those tools, and maybe even, I think as legacy fundraisers, we are, to a certain extent, I consider myself lucky that I think there's a lot of support within the legacy fundraising network. We are quite quick to share expertise, knowledge, experience, maybe more so than other work streams and the other fundraising work streams, is my experience. So kind of piggybacking on somebody else's, like another peer institution's experience of how they've grown their share of the market, or the legacy foresight monitor. All these things are tools that we have to showcase that, yes, the market is growing, but what about our share? So it doesn't mean that because the market is growing, your share is likely to grow if you're not going to make the right investments in the right place or even in the right channels.
Excellent. Yeah, indeed. Thanks, Sinem. Did anyone else want to jump in on that one? Okay.
The big message I've been putting out to my organization is the market is growing, the pie is growing, and our slice of that pie is decreasing. And as soon as you put it forward like that, and you realize that there are literally millions of pounds sat on the table that we are not going to take, that, I guess, for me, that just answers the question.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it, really? I think you've got to be proactive here. Also, another question that begins so being controversial. Thanks, Alan. Do you think legacies might be even more successful if it's sat in the brand team? Age-old question, this one. Emma, I can see you've put an answer in the chat. Thank you very much. In the Q&A, sorry. Thank you very much for doing that. Did you want to expand on that?
To summarize, for those that aren't looking in the chat, I think there's no doubt a halo effect of linking up brand and legacies, and the two do sit very naturally together. But what we haven't touched on much, Sinem did a bit, is the high value aspect of legacy fundraising, with so much of the income coming from a small number of high value legacies. You can't rely or depend on the kind of spray and pray approach of a brand awareness campaign. So I guess as long as you weren't neglecting that side of the program, possibly yes. Legacies sit in so many different places in organizations, don't they? Like, why not stick them with brand? That's a new one.
Anish, Sinem, have you got any experience on this? Joe, I can tell you're dying to say something as well. But Anish, Sinem?
It's a very good question, and experience of working with brand teams has varied, like in the few roles that I've had, and I think it's getting stronger. I think that understanding of each other's areas. I mean, it also depends on how strong the brand element is within your organization. So I've worked in some charities where brand is so high, and you have to sort of make your way up to there. And I'd say in Red Cross, we're kind of on a bit of a level peg. And so actually we're in a really good place to start working out how we can work with each other, which is really good. But I think if we can work closely and have an appreciation for each other's areas of work, and then we'll be able to decide if we're best placed to have legacies within brand, because their remit and what they're trying to do is so huge. And then, like Emma said, the intricacies of, okay, generating interest is fine, but what about then the galvanizing that interest and doing something with it, and then the strategic journeys parts and all of that stuff. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if there's sort of awareness space could sit within in brand. But then I also talked about the importance of having all those elements of legacies all together. So I would always advocate for it to be all together in one group and having a shared sort of like one team approach that are really clear about what they're doing, but then also being able to inspire and collaborate with other teams that make your organization what it is.
Thank you.
I totally echo that. And I think in as much as, yeah, we need to be strongly aligned with brand and collaborate, I feel like brand's scope of work is not just also huge, but also it doesn't have the fundraising edge to it. I think, yes, fundraisers, I feel like I'm in a safe space to say we're quite mercenary. And again, same with legacy admin stuff as well, isn't it? You know where you can strategically move to garner the most amount of income, whereas income generation might not necessarily always be the first pillar for brand.
Yeah, agreed. There's other concerns for those teams, for that team.
Really interesting, all of this, because I think it's on the kind of the brand link up with legacies. I think when I started in the sector, legacies were slightly more siloed, and I think the profile of legacies has only grown as the income stream has grown sector wide. And there is a real brand overlap, and I'm really glad we're having this conversation, because I think that, like, when you are articulating the need for legacy gift, when you're articulating the reason why someone might commit that most powerful of gifts to a charity, you'll get into a really powerful, really deep value space. And I think that that's where there's that big overlap with brand. You're kind of articulating what your cause is, what your charity is doing, and why people should believe in it in a really deep way. So I think there is a real kind of affinity with brand there for sure. And I love that we're in this space. But like, I totally echo what you said, Anish, about the kind of always the technicalities around it, that, okay, brand team is with all the will in the world, it's just not going to have the capacity to be thinking about a will writing service, or any of the kind of technical stuff that we know you're going to need to draw on in, well, that looks like different things and different charities for sure, but you're going to need to draw on that to get people to convert, basically, or give them the support they need to do that. Interesting provocation, though. I think just the other thing I'd say is the importance of supporter care. I think we've seen that when the supporter care team is really bought in, so much benefit comes with, like, just enhancing that legacy message or helping people to convert. I don't think I'm saying put legacies in with supporter care, but I think that's a really important team, and I just want to, yeah, reinforce that, I think.
Another provocative point, Joe. Thanks. Thank you. I think that is where we'll leave it. A massive thank you to our panel for staying a little bit longer. Thank you for those of you who have joined us for staying on that little bit longer. It's been a great and insightful discussion today. A lot to take away. A huge thank you again for taking the time to join this conversation. We'll naturally follow up with a link to a recording of today's session, and please do leave your feedback when the Zoom call ends. It'll pop up once you leave the call, and we'd love to know your thoughts. Any other questions, please do drop me or Joe a line. Otherwise, a big thank you again, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye.
You.